related, sort of around there, have a similar course where they have to engage, design, carry out, analyze, and present on a project. And it's part of the class. I tend to, like I said, I teach courses for very early first years, but throughout I also teach courses in the middle, so statistics and kind of like upper division neuroscience courses. And I tend to build a relationship with students who may be interested in the type of work I do, and I'm happy to train them. My purview on teaching is I want to teach you what I wish I knew when I started my PhD, which is how to code, how to use computers, how to analyze data, and importantly, how to look at brains and things like that. So right now I have about 10 students who I work with who I teach them how to, usually we do projects that I design, but I keep the door open for projects that they want to do. And actually, a student who just graduated from Pitzer last year, we just published a first author paper for her in a very prestigious journal, more prestigious than anything I've ever published in. So I am very proud of her. But I try to have my research assistants, maybe they just want to get their hands dirty with research and see what it's like. And some of my students are like, I want to be a researcher. I want to design an experiment and investigate this, and I like both of those paths. And so I try to cater how I work with them to what they want out of my lab, which is why I came here. It's not to get grants and things like that. Instead, it's about training the next generation of researchers to come and, make it easier for me when I'm older. So, yeah.
It's been a long time.
Yeah.
I just want to highlight a couple of things that, because I think what Sarah and Darren are saying is, there's research that takes place through classes, and there's also research that takes place with individual labs around faculty interest. And I think that even within that category, some faculty do their research with teams of students, and some people do research that is much more about the individual project that a student has, and that could be also guided by a senior thesis project. So there's actually a wide array of ways in which students are involved in research. And I'm just going to highlight a couple of things that Sarah did mention, that we have summer research. I think that particularly in our science fields, that students, we have science fellowships for students to work on research during the summer. That's across the college, but in particular, a lot of students in CAT, in our sciences program, work on projects with faculty during the summertime. And then there is an application process for faculty and students to get awards to develop research projects together. And a lot of it is during the summertime, but also at other times during the academic year. And then one thing I will just say, it's a special program that we have that I will just tell you about briefly, is we have a scholar in residence program. And so every year we have 2 faculty who serve as scholar in residence, and it's one in the spring and one in the fall. And the purpose of that program is for the faculty to develop a new seminar course related to an emerging research project for them, and to then have students engage in that knowledge generation with them through that course. And so the application process involves faculty kind of scoping out what their ideas are and how they want to go, but then embracing and inviting students into that process as they do that seminar and then start that research project during that semester. And so that is a regular part of what we have here, and it kind of rotates through our faculty. So there are, I'm highlighting that because it's a place where I think students are involved at the very inception of those projects and help to carry them through that coursework, but also that hands-on research experience.
Thank you. Darren, I love what you mentioned about the kind of interdisciplinary aspect of subject matter. I know at some school sciences that's not always the case, but with Pitzer, our core value, one of them being interdisciplinary learning, I'd love if any of you could kind of talk about field groups and the interdisciplinary nature of education, particularly within the sciences at Pitzer, and how that's unique.
Well, as I mentioned earlier, we just approved a new data science minor. So this is a minor that focuses just on learning how to work with data. And it's very important for me to be part of that group because we get biologists, and we get chemists, and we get psychologists and sociologists, and we get all sorts of different field groups and different disciplines kind of merging on, well, we all look at data, let's figure out how to do it correctly. And a lot of my courses tend to, because psychology is related to so many other fields, I work with a lot of biologists, I work with a lot of chemists and a lot of physicists from Hardy Mudd who want to learn how to use different computer programs and different methodologies. So there's quite a bit of overlap in a lot of the courses I teach. My introduction to psychology class and my honors psychology are probably the only two classes that are primarily psychologists. Every other class I teach is a mismatch of a whole bunch of different scientific disciplines.
Okay, I can add to that a little bit. I think the places where I see the most interdisciplinarity are in the neuroscience program because it draws across so many different disciplines, and then also the environmental analysis program. And that's been sort of the one I interact with more closely as an ecologist, and it's really been kind of fun because as I went through my PhD and my career, I got narrower and narrower into the biology, my specialized field of biology, and now I'm teaching marine ecology to a classroom of students, some of who are biology majors and some of who are environmental analysis majors who took maybe fewer science courses, but courses in the humanities or social sciences, and have such a different approach to thinking about science and to thinking about, say, public issues or civic issues related to the ocean that it really kind of challenges me and pushes me to think about my discipline in a different way. So sometimes it's faculty directed, and sometimes that interdisciplinary comes from the students to the faculty.
So, David just mentioned field groups, and we both started about field groups, which itself is unique to Pitzer College. That we, and this is, I'm going to speak to the structural issues about interdiscipline work. So, most colleges, universities are arranged by departments, and departments tend to be disciplinary focused. At Pitzer, we don't have disciplinary departments. We have what we call field groups. And so environmental analysis is a great example of one that has, within that field group, people from a range of disciplines. What they come together around is an interest in environmental and human environmental interactions, environmental change, and environmental concerns. So anthropologists or someone from a biology discipline are affiliating with that field group. Data science is another newly emerging field for us, and as Darren said, it has people from a number of different disciplines. So at a structural level, our faculty are aligned with field groups rather than a specific department, and so it encourages them to also think outside of their narrow disciplinary box around the core issues that they have shared interests around. So structurally, we are arrayed and organized in that way, and it even carries over to the physical spaces. That is, we don't have department locations at Pitzer College, but faculty are all intermixed with one another, so that there's also a lot of informal ways in which interdisciplinary appreciation is, I think, facilitated through those structural arrangements. And then the last thing I'll say about this is that we have talked about interdisciplinary work. I just want to add in there that I think that as we think about what I'd say is in our academic programs and curricular programs, that we also have interest in not just across disciplines, but also across contexts. So, and I'll give you a quick example of that a lot of our, and we have a requirement for this, a lot of our courses also have community-based components to it. So it's also about where science or the discipline, kind of the rubber meets the road, and that those courses have portions where students are working with community agencies, community members, as in around projects that support the community, but also projects for their academic requirements for their courses that bring people, their disciplines to other contexts and other people who may not be trained so narrowly in those disciplines. And so we have, I like to think about interdisciplinarity in a very broad sense. It is about the crossing of disciplines, but also we do that crossing and boundary pushing in lots of other different ways.
Before switching over to questions, maybe a fun question to bring up. What is your favorite thing about teaching or working at Pitzer? If you could choose one.
I'm special here because I grew up and I went to high school in Claremont and worked in the village. So I had kind of grew up with the different college students around, and I was a waiter for a really long time, just a few blocks down, and really good paella right over there. And there's something special about Pitzer students, and all the five, there's a little personality with each one. And I left to California to go to grad school, and I was thrilled to come back. And working with the different students from different colleges, from our sister colleges, and seeing like these personalities kind of emerge is really fun. It just challenged how the classes are structured, because we have so many different views, and usually the class is designed in a way that we can get those views. And I feel like I learn, my classes are never the same from semester to semester, because I'm always learning something new from these different, it's not just reading from a book, it's engaging with my students. And Pitzer students are special. They are a special breed of students for sure.
So I can add to that, actually. I think the one thing I enjoy most about teaching here is the opportunity to be interdisciplinary. That I always envisioned myself as a college professor. I knew I was going to wind up teaching marine ecology. I knew I was going to wind up teaching introductory biology. I didn't know I would teach a freshman writing course at Pitzer. And I didn't know they would let me teach it on whatever they want. So whatever I want. So when I teach that course, it's some overlap with science and society. Sometimes we do a lot of philosophy of science. Sometimes we do psychology of how people make decisions about scientific information. I've taught plays in that course, which I never thought I could teach as a college professor. So that has always been something special for me and something really fun.
Many years ago, I went to college. I went to college at a small liberal arts college, and it was truly transformative for me in terms of setting me on my career path. And I think the feeling of being, and I also grew up very close to a large state university, and I went to a small school, and in retrospect, really thought about it. So all the things I appreciated about that context, the faculty-student contact, the close relationships with friends, and knowing, with students, other students, but actually kind of knowing a broader community because it's a small place. And so that scale I have always liked. And so when I came to the consortium, actually I've been in the consortium for a number of years, but at a different institution, it was that size and the community aspect that appeals to me. I'll say two other things about what I love here is, I've been in the consortium, is the opportunity to be in a consortium and to not be in a liberal arts college isolated from everybody else and the only place, but to be in a context where you have both the benefits of larger scale and opportunity, larger scale, but a home campus that feels and is intimate, close, and strong community. And I think that's why I have loved being at the consortium over the years, and what I think is very special about these colleges in particular. For Pitzer specifically then, I'll say what I love about it is our set of core values, that as a community, we know them and we live them. And they have been important for how courses are designed, and implemented, but even during the pandemic, the decisions that we made were guided by our core community values. And so those values speak to me personally, and is part of what I love about being here, is a place that does more than just lip service to a set of educational values.
Thank you all. So my colleague Nick is in the back, so if any of you happen to have any questions, feel free to raise your hand. Feel free to also talk as close as you can on the mic so everyone can hear. Thank you in advance.
Hi, thanks for your time, I really appreciate it. Quick question. When a first-year student arrives at Pitzer interested on generally a pre-med track, other than saying don't do it, is there a general path you put them down, or are there some guidelines? is there any sort of pre-health advising? Thank you.
Yeah, I can answer that. So we do have, so the Tech Science Department, which is a joint program of 3 colleges, we do have a full-time pre-health advisor who is housed in that program. And I would say I never tell a student not to do pre-med. I tell them to make sure they explore everything else before they decide. The science program offers about 17 different science majors, which can feel daunting for a student coming into college. But what I usually tell students, whether they're pre-med, whether they want to study ecology, whether molecular biology, there are really only 1 or 2 decisions they have to make in that first semester. So if they're interested in chemistry chemistry or biology majors, they start with an introductory chemistry course. If they're interested in physics or engineering, we actually have a 3-2 engineering program. They start with an introductory physics course. Everything else they have lots of time to figure out. So that's usually the advice you can give to prospective science majors and pre-health students.
So speaking of like chemistry and people coming in, what kind of supports are there in a class like chemistry to help students who might need just a little more help?
Yeah, so there are actually lots of things that we have going on. We have, for students who feel very concerned or who just want to make sure they have a community before the semester starts, we have a summer bridge program called the STIP program that brings students to campus like a week before orientation across all 3 of the colleges that the science program serves to start to meet each other and get to know each other. We also run one section of chemistry that is focused on students who feel weak in their math skills, and so want an extra hour a week of practicing the math that goes into introductory chemistry. And the other thing I would say, and this is, we don't usually talk about the pandemic as a good thing, but my colleagues in chemistry really changed how they taught that introductory course through the pandemic. So it's much more focused now on collaboration in the classroom. There's a lot of, they do a lot more where they record the lectures ahead of time and then use the class time for group problem solving. So it's a very kind of collaborative, supportive environment for students who are anxious about getting through that first science course.
I was just going to add, not specific to science, but I think that in terms of academic support across the board, and Sarah can about first year seminar, because that is where a lot of that, where students are, all of our students take a first year seminar, right? As Sarah said, it's a small seminar, but part of what they also are introduced there is a lot of the academic and support services across, as well as emotional and mental health services and supports, but particularly the academic services across the campus. And so we have tutors for classes, note takers for classes as examples, as well as other kinds of faculty office hours providing support. But there's a writing center that assists students with their writing assignments and tasks. And so I think the point here is that those other support services exist beyond the sciences as well for our students. And they will learn about those both through orientation and their first year seminar as well.
So does Pitzer offer a class like anatomy or physiology, or would I have to take that at another Claremont college?
We actually offer both of those classes. Physiology and anatomy are offered here. There are some, when you get into the upper level biology courses, there is some cross-campus registration. So, I am the only marine ecologist of the 5 colleges. And there are other faculty like that at Pomona and at Harvey Mudd who are the only representative of the field, and they welcome students from any of the colleges into those classes.
I have a question on whether it was like a good curriculum or curriculum for the first year. So, say for example, I want to take an econ course at Claremont or a tech course at Harvey Mudd and that social science at do that.
I'm not sure that I heard everything you said, but I think it was about the across-campus ability to take classes across the different campuses.
Yeah, especially for first years.
Yeah, so there are, for each of our campuses, right, there's requirements about how many classes you need to take at your home campus. But I will say no, our curriculum, however, is much more a 5C curriculum. So I am the dean of Pitzer College. I meet regularly with the deans from the other colleges. And the curriculum is set up so that there are, students can take courses across any of the colleges. And there are some special cases where that was more difficult. So in certain tracks within a college. So Harvey-Mudd is an example that their students are much more tracked on particular, let's say, engineering or computer science track. And so their courses are more closed off to people from other campuses because of the need to meet their students and to keep those students moving forward in a carefully sequenced way. But most of our programs involve being able to take courses across the campuses, and those courses count toward your degree requirements, your major requirements on your home campus. Many of our programs are also structured to be intercampus. So I will say, as an example, math organizes their courses together as a consortium in terms of what will be offered on the different campuses at different times, and are much more intentional about being able to provide that curriculum semester to semester that meets the needs of the students at Pitzer, as well as Scripps in CMC, Claremont Mechanic College, and Pomona College. So that is a possibility. There are some places where it's tight and difficult, or where courses are closed up to the students only from those campuses, but we really do think about it as a 5C curriculum.
Any other questions?
Could you talk more about the first year seminar, and also if you could explain more about I'm having a difficulty wrapping my head around the open, the possibility to create your own major, and how does that work out?
I'll do the first year seminar piece, and then yeah, and Darren is talking as well. So first year seminar is a required course for all incoming first year students. It meets the writing requirement, the writing graduation requirement. Sometime over the summer, you will get emailed a list of, I think we are running 19 or 20 sections this year, so you'll get emailed a list of those courses with their descriptions, and you'll get to rank your top 5. And then I or someone else will spend the summer trying to sort everybody into at least one of their top 3, if not their favorite choice. The topics range all over the place, so I mentioned I do things that focus on science and society. One of my favorite titles is Love and Loathing in Los Angeles, which is focused really on learning about the local environment and communities. We've had topics related, I'm trying to remember off the top of my head, related to immigration, topics related to the future. Aaron, do you want to talk about yours?
Yeah, it's, I was hoping to mention this earlier. One great part of teaching the first year seminar is you can teach it on almost anything. And so I, instead of, cognitive neuroscientist, I was like, I don't want to teach a cognitive neuroscience class if I can help it. I want to try something new. And so I taught a class called Virtual You, which is all about social media and personalities we create online. I'm not on social media. I don't know anything about it. So it was this really deep, I learned some lingo, and engaging with students on topics that I'm not perfect on, but instead I provide reading, and then we have these great discussions on them. I believe at the same time I taught a first year seminar, there was a first year seminar on puppies. I believe there were dogs. There was a first year seminar on the psychology of cricket, the game cricket. It's these kind of strange, very Pitzer-based classes, but they are at the heart, they are a writing class. And I'm not trained as a writing instructor, but instead engaging in ideas and arguments and how to get your ideas out. And that was, a really rewarding experience. And I believe there are still my advisees, and they found it fun and exciting also.
I think that for our faculty, it is a great opportunity that, because they get to do things outside of their normal yes, and things that they're interested in and exploring that. And I said, what is common across is it is a writing intensive class, and the faculty are provided a series of workshops and development kinds of training, if you will, to help them work with their first year seminars. and to kind of think about what is the standard or norm across all those sessions. And Sarah helps coordinate all that, or does coordinate all of that. So our faculty have a framework in which they're developing those courses, but really being able to do stuff that they're interested in or that is outside of their normal box. And I think that is also what our faculty love about teaching that, is they get to do that, and at the same time they get to interact with our first year students in a very intense, close way, and get to know those students. And so it is and for students, and it's an introduction to faculty relationships certainly, and college writing, but also college work. And in a way that is not forcing you down a major track right away or anything else, but a chance to really engage in the intellectual exploration that we hope everybody is able to do in college. So I think the other question that was related to openness of majors maybe and so on. So I will say that both of them comment on majors within their fields, but our majors have, for our traditional major, I'll say it that way, that there is a set of requirements that must be met. So it may be X number of courses, 10 or 11 courses, or some have about 12, and certain within that you must have a methods class and a theory class and so on, and there's a set of courses that meet each of those requirements. So within a major, that is often how they're structured, we have requirements, we said about first year summer across the college, that at some point during your college career you will have had a writing intensive course, a course that does involve a social praxis or a community-based component, that it's really how we're making sure and that our mission and values, how they get instantiated in the curriculum. And so as a student, here are the things that you will do. And there are a number of, so now with social practice courses, there's a number of praxis courses that meet this requirement. They could be in psychology, they could be in sociology, they could be in any number of disciplines. And so depending what your major is, you can take those courses that meet both major requirements and college requirements, or have the flexibility to take something that is outside of your major and meets those requirements. So the curriculum is and you will plan this with your academic advisor as you go through. So it's also not a place where it's like, here, figure it out, but that really you'll start some of that planning and learning about that in a first year seminar, and then as you move towards your major, have a major advisor who will help you make sure that you are on track through your time here. The other thing I would say that, and maybe is part of the question too, is that one of the most popular majors at Pitzer College is a self-designed major. And so if you don't feel like you fit exactly in a specific major area, but you think, I want to combine my interest in fashion and social media with biology, and that is a possibility, and it is our third or fourth most popular major. But there's a structure that's given for those in terms of what you need to do in terms of the parameters to meet a major. You have 2 advisors who need to approve that plan. It goes through our committee for approval, so that we know that you're meeting the requirements for a Pitzer education, but also with the flexibility to do something that is we haven't thought of before, and that would meet your particular needs.
Just as a quick follow-up to that, how easy is it for students to change their major, double major, that process for that? Because I hate to break it to you all, half of you sitting in this room are going to change your major at least once.
Yeah, at least once, right?
At least
Yes. It is, so at Pitzer, you are not required to declare a major until the first semester of your junior year. We generally encourage students to declare as soon as they think they know what they want to do, but again, we have students change all the time. That's really normal. Doing a major, double major, a combined major, which is like an integration of 2 different majors, or a major and a minor. Students will bounce around between some of those over their first couple of years until they sort of figure out what exactly they want to do.
Yeah, and part of the importance, I think, of having this advisor-advisee relationship started right at the beginning is I'm able to track with my students. The first time I meet them, I say, what are you interested in? And then every semester we come back to it, okay, how's this work? How's this work? So there is even before they declare, there's a lot of like, I really like, digital media, and I really, but now I'm moving into chemistry, and now I'm doing this. And there's a lot of changes that we all make throughout college on what we're interested in. But as an advisor who has a pretty good sense of who my students are, I get to track with them and help them at every step, which is really great.
And as a really pragmatic thing, the later it is, the harder it is to change, because we need to make those requirements, right? So we encourage students that coming in that you may know what you want to do, but also you should explore and think about things, and that's where I think we see much more change. That people find areas of interest that they didn't know that they had, or that they really get turned on to a particular field of study because of the course that they have, and so. That is a normal process for students here as they kind of think they have an idea what they want to do, they kind of explore more, again, in the first 2 years in particular, where they're getting college requirements, but not necessarily so focused within a major. And then as they land on a major and commit to that their courses tend to be get more specifically focused. So that change is very common, or the adding on of a minor, or creating a combined or self-designed major happens over time. But if people change at the very end, it's difficult because you may not have all of those major requirements by that time.
How many of you here have no idea what you want to major in? Be proud. Own up to it. Yes, thank you. See, it is okay. Any other questions?
So in terms of Pitzer's social responsibility aspect, what exactly, or what opportunities does Pitzer offer to help inspire or help low-income students with the college admission process if they want to go into STEM, or if they have majors in STEM?
So I heard two different things there. One was the social responsibility graduation requirement, and the other was low-income or first-generation students.
No, like as part of that social responsibility.
Part of Pitzer, yeah.
What is Pitzer?
So I mentioned earlier we have a summer bridge program, which is aimed specifically at students who are low income or the first in their family to go to college who are interested in science majors. And so in that case, you come to campus a week before orientation, and you get to meet the other students who are like you, who are interested in science majors. You get to work closely with a smaller group of faculty. And you get to kind of start to build that support structure that you'll need to get through your first year of science classes.
Just related to this issue, so with respect to social responsibility, all of our college requirements, as I said, that there are courses that are designated that meet those requirements, and so you have those in the social practice area in particular. That a lot of our courses that are taught that have a community component are also they're done with the assistance, collaboration, and support of our community engagement center. That so we have a center here that is staff, has student interns in that, and that they work with our faculty to develop community engaged components to their classes that will meet that requirement, but also have internships and placements for students to do community work through that center. We have another program here, which is CASA, which is social action, and it is based in Ontario. So we have a little outpost in Ontario, and those courses are the social responsibility community-based is central to them, and that students work as a class with community organizations to design projects and implement those projects that will provide information that's important to those community organizations, but also in using the skills and theoretical frameworks that students are learning in the class at the same time. And so part of that, the special part of that is we actually have those courses are taught in a different place, embedded within the community. So for that community-based and social practice, social responsibility pieces, it's really what are the courses that meet that, and they range across any number of disciplines. Related to the Bridge program, we also do have a first generation programming here at the college. It runs through my office and in tandem or partnership with our student affairs area. And it is an opportunity for us to provide educational enrichment for opportunities for first-gen students, but also to help support them to feel cohort and connection and community as first-generation students here navigating a elite liberal arts college. And so that programming exists through my office and has some staff who are part of that program, and is also largely student-driven too, in terms of meeting the needs of the students in those situations.
I think I saw a question over there.
I think we have one right here, and I'll jump over.
Okay.
Sorry, so I was kind of wondering about when students sort of begin working on their senior thesis and what support and resources are available to students as they go through that process.
Okay, so senior thesis, and I can talk about science. Outside of the sciences, every field group has their own sort of expectations for a capstone or a thesis project. But in the sciences, senior thesis usually starts in the fall of your senior year. You may start planning it in the spring of your junior year. So usually by the time you leave for summer break as a junior, you've identified the faculty member who's going to mentor your senior thesis. And you may already have been doing research in the lab before that. In terms of resources, so you're usually working on an existing research project with a professor. And that professor covers the financial cost of any of your materials for the thesis project. And then you're working closely. So usually a professor will not have more than 3 or 4 senior thesis students a semester, because we're working closely with each one. It's actually quite time intensive to help give them the scientific resources in addition to the materials resources to design the experiment that they're going to do and to conduct the research. I don't know if you want to talk about senior projects in psychology.
Sure. So, well, I advise. I'm a reader for senior thesis students in neuroscience. So very similar to that. In neuroscience, we give them students either a year project or a semester project. Their semester project is usually a big report, like a grant proposal or something like that, where their full year senior thesis project is usually an experiment or something like that, as what Sarah sort of fleshed out. And in psychology, it's a little different. We have our students take a capstone course, but no, they do not have to complete a project. We do have an honors project or program, which is invite only. So we take students who have, because psychology is a pretty big group, we take a very small set of students who meet very high requirements, and we have them do a series, well, 2 experiments, one in the fall, one in the spring, write a big report, present them, and things like that. But that, very similar to the sciences, we pair our students who complete this honors program with both a first reader who acts kind of like a research mentor, as well as a second reader, the person who teaches the course, who kind of is the day-to-day work or advisor.
So as part of Pitzer, there's a lot of different intro-related courses, like general physics versus physics with a focus on biology. So I was wondering what the main difference was in the way these different types of interrelated courses are taught because of the different focuses that they have, and when you would recommend taking the general courses versus these interrelated courses.
So I can talk specifically about physics. The physics discipline offers 2 tracks for intro physics, and one is for physics majors who tend to have a stronger math background than biology majors. So that's why you see those 2 courses, those 2 different tracks in the course catalog. In general, students who are biology majors are taking their physics a little bit later. They're not taking it in their first semester. But in terms of majoring in physics, they've actually made sure that you can continue to make, if you take the one for biology majors and then decide you want to major in physics, you can actually use that as your intro sequence for the regular physics major. I don't think I caught the rest of your question. Or was that?
I was asking if when you would recommend taking an intro course versus what are the general courses?
So most of our programs have a single introductory track. Physics is a little bit weirder because it is trying to meet needs of both the physics majors and other kinds of science majors who need some physics in their background. But psychology, sociology, anthropology, chemistry, biology, all the ones I can think of, there is an intro course that you would take in your first or second year if you're interested in exploring that discipline, and then the later courses will build on that experience.
I think that is a fair statement. For almost all of that is the gateway, but it doesn't have to be the gateway in. It's just that you get exposure to that discipline, that field through that introductory course.
I think we have time for one more question.
How would it work to double major in neuroscience and English on the Pitzer?
Sorry, to double major neuroscience and
English on the Pitzer?
English.
I have an advisor who's neuroscience and English. It is, it takes some juggling sometimes when your majors seem very far apart, but possibly, maybe due to the consortium and the variety of courses, you end up finding a quick little side track of a course, say, in data science, which is the ethics, like an ethics course in data science, which is more philosophical than data science driven, but it happens to kind of capture these two sort of divergent research or academic interests. So there are courses that will help people who, or will count for, say, a writing or some sort of, I guess, well, we have that's the F word, like a literature piece, maybe like a philosophy of neuroscience, which we do have, which Brian Keeley's courses will have very intensive writing parts to them, which may be able to be roped into different lit tracks, but also fulfill neuroscience courses. I'm not sure if that answered your question.
Yeah, so the short answer is it is possible and it is encouraged. I mean, some of my best students in biology were double majors in art and biology. Or I once had a student who was a classics major who was just taking enough biology courses to get into med school, but not actually a biology major. And those students really bring something different and interesting to the classroom, so that kind of interdisciplinarity is encouraged.
Yeah, and just real quick, I tend to tell my neuroscience advisees that getting training in the humanities is really important because we're looking at neurons and cells and brain oscillations and yada, 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 and those belong to people. And people eat breakfast, and people have histories, and people drive their cars, or they don't, and that matters. And so getting a holistic view, even though you're looking at cells, you're actually looking at a larger system. And so with culture and history and all that. And so I tend to push my students to take both of those types of courses.
And I'm just going to pick on that last point that Darius made, because I think there's also the difference between actually having two formal majors and then having a major but doing a lot of exploration outside of that. And so the latter is we would encourage all of our students to do that. But if you want to go that extra step and have two formal majors or major and minor, that just know that you have to meet those requirements, and that's where the juggling and close connection with an advisor is the best guide for you to kind of say, like, how can you actually structure this in a way that it will make sense for you in terms of the rollout of the courses to meet the requirements in the unit of time that you want to be able to do that.
Well, I want to thank the three of our panelists, Darren, Alan,